discuss Joe Biden, his son, or his family with the leader?
It doesn't matter what I discuss, but I will say this. Somebody ought to look into Joe Biden's statement because it was disgraceful, where he talked about billions of dollars that he's not giving to a certain country unless a certain prosecutor's taken off the case. And you wouldn't because he's a Democrat.
Just put it please. The president earlier today responded to the suggestion by some resistance media that he was engaged in a round of collusion 2.0. Well, after the president made those comments, two publications, the Wall Street Journal and the Washington Post, published new details of the supposed whistleblower complaint. They report that the president had a conversation with the Ukrainian president where Trump suggested that Ukraine look into potential corruption regarding Joe Biden's son, Hunter. Now, this apparently happened on a number of occasions. Now, numerous outlets have reported on those potentially troubling Biden family conflicts as well. But that, of course, wasn't the part of the story that the media and the left want to tell. No, they see this as an opportunity to whip the country into another anti-Trump frenzy.
It is illegal, and it is clearly outside of the bounds of the president's Article 2 presidential authorities.
It certainly might reach the levels of the standards in the Constitution about being high crimes and or misdemeanors.
What we see now emerging is a massive cover-up effort by the White House and the Department of Justice to prevent the facts from coming to light.
Well, how do we get here, and what's the White House saying tonight? For the latest on this still developing story, we go to Chief National Correspondent Ed Henry in New York. Ed.
Laura, I have new information tonight about that July phone call at the center of this entire controversy. Details suggesting that Democrats and pundits in the media may be overreaching again. A senior administration official familiar with the transcript of this call between President Trump and his counterpart from Ukraine told me it's overblown to suggest there was any threat to national security, any crime discussed. This top official adding, quote, the media better be careful with this. There is no there there. It's in the president's interest to put the transcript of the call out and show that there was no quid pro quo. Let's go through the timeline. May 9th, New York Times reports that Rudy Giuliani, the president's attorney, was traveling to Ukraine to push for a Biden probe. That trip called off. June 13th, ABC News has an interview they released that says the president told them he'd be willing to listen if a foreign government offered political dirt. July 25th, the president has that call with the president of Ukraine, newly sworn into office. August 12th, the whistleblower involved here files a complaint a couple of weeks after the call. August 21st, the New York Times reports Giuliani is pushing again to get Ukraine to investigate Biden. August 28th, about a week later, Politico reports the White House is slow-walking $250 million in aid to Ukraine. But that money was released on September 12th. So the president today said in the Oval Office, just like with Justice Brett Kavanaugh on that story, the media is going to wind up looking foolish.
You've had a very bad week, and this will be better than all of them. This is another one. So keep playing it up because you're going to look really bad when it falls.
And Laura, as you mentioned at the top, that breaking story from the Wall Street Journal says the president did not mention foreign aid on the call, that there was no quid pro quo for basically, we'll give you aid if you open up this Biden investigation. That may be why this senior official told me the White House should release the transcript of the call and show everybody there may not be much here. Laura?
All right, Ed, thanks so much. And joining me now to discuss is Peter Schweizer, investigative reporter and author of Secret Empires, along with Greg Jarrett, Fox News legal analyst and author of the forthcoming book, Witch Hunt, the story of the greatest mass delusion in American political history. All right, Peter, there's a lot bubbling up today and even tonight on this. Now, you think that Trump is right to question Biden's dealings with the Ukraine, but tonight what you're hearing is that, well, these conversations included an implicit quid pro quo, or floating the idea of a quid pro quo. Again, we know none of this. But that's where you watch the other networks and you're reading, online. People are saying, well, he might not have explicitly said it, but it was implicit because the issue of aid was also part of these general conversations.
Yeah, look, Laura, the underlying story here involves Hunter Biden going around the world, really, on collecting large payments from foreign governments and foreign oligarchs. In the case of Ukraine, he's being paid $83,000 a month by a corrupt Ukrainian oligarch who runs a company called Burisma, and he is supposed to be advising them on natural gas regulatory issues. He has no background in Ukraine. He has no background in energy or natural gas. So the question is, what is he being paid for? He's not being paid for his expertise. He has none. His father at this time is the point person on U.S. policy to Ukraine. The same thing is taking place halfway around the world in China. Donald Trump is right to ask the question and to ask that there be an investigation to see what Hunter Biden was being paid for. Joe Biden has offered no answers. Hunter Biden, when he's been asked about this, has lied repeatedly, and they've been proven lies by ABC News and other outlets. So these are the underlying questions, and look at what the whistleblower says, but the underlying issue here involves corruption at the highest scale. And my point is, look, if people want to defend the Bidens on this, get used to it, because everybody in Washington is going to start cashing in this way.
All right, Greg, focusing just on the allegations that are being made without any specific information, which is typical of the media. Here's Joe Biden's response today, again trying to shift the narrative to Trump's calls. Again, what I just referred to regarding Biden's Ukraine ties. Watch.
Not one single credible outlet has given any credibility to his assertion. Not one single one. And so I have no comment except the president should start to be president.
Okay, so he said later, well, the president should release the transcript. And I guess he forgot about the numerous reports regarding this story, including the New York Times wrote about Biden. Bloomberg has covered some of this stuff as well. So is Biden saying that the New York Times isn't a credible source now for the underlying concerns about this conflict of interest, Greg?
Well, he's either lying or he's oblivious to what the New York Times and other news organizations have written about. But, nobody in the media seems to be talking about the quid pro quo of Joe Biden. He was seen on camera bragging about how he gave the Ukrainian government 6 hours to fire a prosecutor, or he would withhold up to, I think it was $1 billion of American aid to Ukraine. Now, that's a quid pro quo, but that's okay to the media. But President Trump makes a request or a demand to Ukraine to investigate corruption there that may be connected to an American political official, with no quid pro quo, and that's somehow, an impeachable offense. Look, this whistleblower, in my judgment, is not a whistleblower at all. Forget the fact that, he appears to be spying on an American spy spying on the president, listening in on conversations. But he doesn't qualify as a whistleblower under the statute. The statute confines these urgent concern complaints to misconduct and maladministration and abuse of power in the intelligence community. The president is not a member of the intelligence community. In fact, they report to him. So this is the reason.
But the acting director, right? He took it as a whistleblower complaint. So he made the decision to.
No, the inspector general took it as. Yes.
He turned it over, saying it was substantial enough to turn it over to the inspector general.
Apparently, we've learned through his legal counsel, has written a letter saying this guy doesn't qualify as a whistleblower because it's not within the intelligence community. So the media seems to ignore that.
I want to read what the Journal's reporting today indicated, Peter, and I want you to respond specifically to this, okay? He told him that he should work with Mr. Giuliani on Biden and that people in Washington wanted to know whether allegations were true or not. One of the people said that they interviewed. Mr. Trump did not mention a provision of foreign aid to Ukraine on the call, said this person, who didn't believe Mr. Trump offered the Ukrainian president any quid pro quo for his cooperation on any investigation. Now, I imagine that was a White House source who brought that to the Journal today. Everyone's trying to put their spin on this story. Going back to my original question to you, Peter, will or could this be a problem for the administration if the Democrats sink their teeth into this and say, you were whining about Hillary and Fusion GPS, now it looks like you guys are doing what you said they were doing during the 2016 campaign.
No, I don't think so. I mean, look, we have to see what information comes out. But the bottom line is the President of the United States can certainly request that a foreign leader investigate possible corruption or criminal conduct. I think you should have the U.S. Department of Justice working with the Ukrainians. I wouldn't want the Ukrainians investigating this by themselves. This is a country that has a long history mired in corruption. So I think the way to do this is the U.S. Department of Justice should work with Ukrainian authorities to investigate precisely what went on. What was Hunter Biden being paid to do? Not only in Ukraine, but in China. You have this $1 billion private equity deal. You have $145,000 from a
That's a lot of money.
oligarch.
That's a lot of money. He made a lot of money, right? A lot of cash.
He made a lot of money. Yeah, and he had no expertise in any of it. And by the way, unlike the Russia collusion, which was this theory, we know the money went there because we have the bank accounts. It was a criminal case involving Hunter Biden's business partner.
Yeah, it wasn't a made-up dossier. This
is
is a financial. Yeah, this was a financial trail, not a phony dossier paid for by an opposition party.
Correct.
Greg Jarrett. John Solomon is reporting tonight that it was actually an official at the State Department that urged Giuliani's follow-up on this as well. So
that's right.
This is another, and that was important. That was important tonight. He was on Hannity discussing this. Talk to that briefly.
Well, if Giuliani is acting on behalf of the United States State Department as essentially an emissary to go over there and try to mend fences with them and engage in better relations, he's not acting in some capacity to get them to engage in a quid pro quo to go after Joe Biden. He's doing something entirely different. He's on assignment to the United States government. And again, the media pays no attention to things like that.
All right, Greg and Peter, thanks so much tonight.